Hey people, so this is going to be a little bit different than most of my videos because um, this is a response video, and as you can see from the title, um, yeah, it's going to be a little bit more personal. Um, the question was, why am I an atheist? And Pastor David asked it, so I'm going to answer it. The answer is not simple. Um, the answer is not something that I can just explain in the 10 minutes, but I will do my best. Um, it didn't happen overnight. I'll just make that very clear. It wasn't, I woke up one morning and went, hey, I'm an atheist. It was a long process, a hard process. It was almost like a 25-year process. Um, when I was a kid, I want to preface this with explaining the process I went through. It was very much like the process I went through very early in my life when I found out that Santa Claus wasn't real. It didn't shock me. It didn't surprise me. I just kind of had questioned it, and when it happened, I went, okay, that answers my question. This is pretty much, even though it took 25 years to get to it, I'm 35, so it was about 5 years back that this happened. Um, I, just, I started questioning it when I got into my teens, and I was when I was a kid, I went to church, but my parents didn't take me to church. My parents never forced me to believe any particular religion, even though technically you could count us as Christian because we had the Bible. My grandparents on both sides were Christian. My aunt was an ultra Christian. So Christianity was around me. We celebrated all the Christian holidays. Um, we prayed to Jesus and so on. Even today, when we go to when I go to my parents' house for holidays, we still pray. And my parents at this point know not to ask me to pray because I won't. I respect it, and I don't. I'll bow my head and I'll close my eyes, but I don't pray. I will follow it out of respect for my parents, not for any other reason. Um, but when I was a kid, I went to church by myself. I wanted to find the answers, and when I was when I was a kid, I went to church, and whenever I asked questions, the answers were always one of two things, basically, or variations of these two things. Either have faith or God works in mysterious ways. That's pretty much it. And usually it was followed up by read this passage from the Bible, read that passage from the Bible. And most of the time that wasn't very comforting. Um, but I just kept with it, and I wanted to believe it. And, even though I didn't once I started getting a little older and I didn't go to church as much, I still, I kind of just went, okay, it is. It just is. It's there, it is. As I got older, I started questioning it more. My first real real questioning wasn't the questioning of was was something that was brought to me. I didn't search it out. Was when I was in high school. Um, we had a biology class. It was a science class, and we were studying biology, and we reached this subject of evolution. And there, the teacher had to make it very clear. It was like the most uncomfortable thing I'd ever seen the teacher have to do, is have to try to explain evolution, but then also back it up by, well, this was prior to creation science being ruled as religion and not a valid argument. Um, so there was still, they still were teaching, trying to say, well, there's different views and da 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 da, and but it was like really confusing because I was like, if there isn't just one view, what's going on? And I mean, I had already been questioning it. It wasn't like this was the first time that, my science teacher made me question my beliefs. But I had been questioning it, but this was just the first real milestone of it. And then I started researching, and I started questioning it. And the more I researched and the more I questioned, the more my beliefs started being eroded. And I wanted them to be true. I mean, I fought tooth and nail to keep my beliefs. And it got to a point where it just didn't make sense. And when I turned 18, I moved to Los Angeles. And it was a little before I was 18, but around that time period, I wound up moving here, and I started bumping into people of all different faiths, all different sexual orientations, everything, and that just even eroded it further. And then when I got into this lifestyle, if for those who don't know, who are watching me for the first time, I'm part of the BDSM leather lifestyle, and I have been for the past 15 years. That even then I started to try to question my faith with the lifestyle that I was leading. And I knew that being happy was my number one goal. And it took me a long time digging through, reading. I researched pretty much every religion out there. And it didn't click. Nothing clicked. It just nothing, there was no evidence to prove it. And the key thing I kept doing, and I didn't realize it at the time, is I was using the scientific method to try to prove faith, which you can't. So the more I was doing it, and the more that I kept going, the more I kept coming across, this isn't working. And it basically just came down one day. I was sitting there, and I was thinking, and it just went, there it is. There's no God. Jesus was a made-up figure. There might have been a real man, there might have been, a thing, but the stories, when I was butting it up against history, just wasn't working. And it just didn't click. And it came to a day where I just went, okay. And then it was like a spark went off in my head. And it was like, oh, okay. I'm okay with that. I'm happy. I don't need to fear hell. I don't need to fear not going to heaven. I don't need to fear God. I don't need to be fearful to live my life. I don't need to live my life in a hopes that things will work out. Instead, I can just exist, and I can be happy, and I can focus on making myself happy and the people around me, making sure my animals are happy, making sure my girlfriend is happy, making sure things in my life are good. And it took, like I said, almost 25 years to get to that point. But once I got to that point, it just went, there it is. There's no Santa Claus. There's no God. There's no Easter Bunny. There's no fairies. It took me a long time, and still, I every once in a while want to have a faith, but then I put it up against my own belief in science, and it just clashes. And I always say very clearly, science trumps religion. History trumps religion. There's nothing else I've got. That's it. And like I said, for my people who normally watch my videos, this is a side of me you usually aren't going to see. For those people who are watching my videos for the first time, this is not the typical stuff you're going to see on my channel. That's pretty much it. So thank you for everybody who watched. That's it. Be well and safe.